but the keystone to that star is the patient. If the keystone falls away, none of the other
Yeah, none of
five
it else
points
works.
matter.
Yeah. Well, hey, Sharon, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Rafi. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. I'm looking forward to diving into the whole topic of architecture and environment and what that does for healing and the healthcare process. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to becoming an architect? And then we'll kind of dive in from there.
Well, let's see. As a little girl, I was a patient in a hospital. And I think, like many people, they grow up with what they're familiar with. And so, guess what I grew up to be? I grew up to be a nurse.
Okay.
And about midway through that career, I ended up studying sculpture under a woman named Melinda Hunt. She was the Yale sculpture instructor for Maya Lin, and she taught the concept of the scars upon the earth. And interestingly, she told me I should be an architect. So either she thought I wasn't very good at sculpture or she thought I'd be good at architecture. But I still treasure her advice and I followed her lead.
Yeah. So I guess what made you, were you just studying sculpture on the side as a nurse, or were you kind of exploring, I'm going to maybe explore something else to do, or how did that come to fruition?
You know, that's a good question, Rafi. I felt like as a nurse, I had replayed all the kindness that had been done to me. I mean, I literally worked with the surgeon and several of the nurses who had taken care of me as a child. So I truly came full circle and felt fulfilled and was just seeking something different.
Interesting. So tried sculpture, decided that wasn't for you, moved into architecture. Once you became an architect, what made you focus on like the area of healthcare for you to be your area of focus? Was it just natural because you were a nurse, or was there something in particular that kind of drew you into, designing spaces for people to heal in?
Well, the joke is, I was born in a hospital, I worked in a hospital, and I thought I would never enter a hospital again when I studied architecture.
Yeah.
But now that I'm a healthcare architect, I'll probably, when I die, whether I go to heaven or hell, it'll be in a hospital. No, initially I didn't. Again, I thought I'd never enter a hospital again. But as an intern in architecture, I was at a construction site for a bank, and there was all this agony about the staff toilet not being in the right location. And I didn't really care about the staff toilet at the bank. I mean, how many of us stay so long at the bank that we're worried about where the restroom is? My next project, again, quite fortunately, as an intern, was to create a brand new medical campus in Corpus Christi. And after one of the initial meetings, the architect who was mentoring me said on the side, "Oh, that emergency department nurse doesn't know what she's talking about." And I was offended by that. She may not have known architecture, but she certainly knew her emergency department, and the questions were asking were valid. So I immediately changed gears, and ever since I've been dedicated to just designing healthcare environments.
Yeah, yeah, which is what we're going to talk about here. So designing the space, really the space where people will come to be served, to treated, to be healed in a lot of senses. So, one of the things you had mentioned, and I heard you say this a while back, was that the setting in healthcare is one of the aspects to healing. So let's dive into that a little bit. What do you mean by that? What are the implications? Like, how important is the space when it comes to somebody's, getting better, getting healed?
You know, Rafi, the typical response is the setting is healing if there's natural light.
Uh-huh.
And I think we can all relate to that. And yes, that's true. But where I'm coming from as a healthcare architect, it has to do more than just bring in natural light, which is a challenge in a healthcare setting. So think about a bad building. Bad buildings are unhealthy. And often that unhealthiness is air. I mean, if COVID taught us nothing else, even for laymen, we now recognize that the movement and fresh air is of value and importance for our health. Um, I think it's interesting that Florence Nightingale, people think of her as the first nurse. Florence Nightingale was never a nurse. She was a mathematician, and what she brought to healthcare architecture was the mechanical engineering and the airflow. She literally designed a system where there were columns in the building, and there was a space around the column to pull fresh air in and then go out through the patient windows.
Interesting. Never
So,
heard that.
yeah.
Okay. Well, so obviously then it's about the air moving, the natural light that's a piece of it. Um, what else are we talking here when we're designing a space for people to come and receive healthcare?
Well, you might be leading me up to the quote that you've heard me say before, and that is buildings don't heal people,
Yes.
people heal people. And what I mean by that is your listeners might relate to the Hippocratic Oath, do
Hmm.
no harm. So, as a healthcare architect, we don't want the building to get in the way. A literal example might be if you've designed a room that meets code, that meets the client's program, that meets the client's budget, but if it's too crowded and people can't move around in their normal choreography to care for a patient, then then that clinician isn't able to help heal the patient. So the building cannot get in the way, do no harm.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, yeah. And with that kind of leads us into this. You talk about the Keystone Star. Um, so this is like actually applying the principles of architecture as a component of healing. So I guess walk us through what are the five key points of that star, and then maybe we'll dive into each one of those in a little bit more detail.
Okay, well, do you mind if I explain where the Keystone Star came from?
Oh, yeah, sure. Give us the background.
Okay. So, in addition to practicing architecture, I also have the luxury of teaching at UCSF in the medical
Uh-huh.
school. This is for physicians and any kind of clinical leader who wants to be an executive running a hospital. They're required to have a master's degree. And in that master's program, one of the classes is Healthcare Architecture 101. Now, think about this. Those students are not visual, they're not naturally creative, or they don't think of themselves as creative. And I only have 10 weeks
Ooh.
to teach them the basics of architecture. So I came up with a tool that I wanted the students to walk away from, if nothing else, in those 10 weeks. And that's a 5-point star with 5 points. But the keystone to that star is the patient. If the keystone falls away, none of the other
Yeah, none of
five
it else
points
works.
matter.
Yeah.
And we say patient, but honestly, we should be talking more about a person. A patient implies someone is already ill. Our goal in healthcare should be to meet the person. So there's a 5-point star. That's a tool to allow laymen to either look at a drawing or a budget for a renovation and assess it in one or all five of those points.
Awesome. And I guess, what are those 5 points then?
Okay, so the 5 points are access, affordability, safety, quality, and fulfillment.
Okay. So that's the five. Let's just pick that first one then. Access. Like, so I'm an OT. When I think about accessibility and access, I'm thinking like, okay, does it meet ADA compliance? Where's the ramp? You know, all of the rise to run ratio, where are the grab bars? I'm assuming you're thinking a little bit more in depth than that, right? No, more than just meeting the, like you said, meeting the code of making sure it's up to spec. There's more to it than just that, right?
Well, actually, you're on the right track. I'm just pulling back a little bit further to not forget how does the patient, the person, or
Mm-hmm.
even the clinical staff get there
Yeah.
physically? So where's the bus stop? Duh, is there a canopy? In America, our healthcare environments, most of our medical campuses are a sea of asphalt parking.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The second complaint of our healthcare settings beyond noise is parking. And imagine you have a patient or family member, they're frustrated before they even get to your
Yeah.
clinic door or before they ever get to the surgery waiting room. So it's that attitude toward access and are they being supported? Like Rafa, you talked about the grab bars. Are grab bars there to support the patient? That's an access point.
All righty. So again, like this is not just thinking about okay, they're going to get into the building and the stuff in the building, but you're talking the entire environment. So how far away is a parking lot from where this person's going to have to go, or I'm sure like the elevator even, or the placement of stairs and things like that within the building, huh?
Yes. Yes, getting around.
Okay. And that moves us on to the affordability price. I'm assuming this has dollars and cents is what we're talking about, but is there anything in specific that we want to dive into about the affordability of it? Not just meeting the maybe the customer, the hospital system or the organization's budget, but is there another factor here that we need to consider?
Yeah, I think we talk about the triple bottom line, which is of value, but I want to go either beyond that or peripheral to that. For me, affordability is literally not wasting anyone's time or resources. So it might have to do with paper. Why are we still producing so much
Yeah.
paper? Can we save time and money on paper? Or it might have to do with supplies. Can we get the supplies in and out more efficiently and not waste having supplies sitting and being unused? Or that waste, of course, we all think in terms of waiting is a waste, but there are also steps. If I can save a clinician steps when I'm aligning rooms, I can save that clinician's time instead of hunting and gathering to be spent with the patient. So that's the waste that I'm talking about.
Yeah. So that might come into, like you said, putting rooms in a certain arrangement, maybe down a corridor or something, so that maybe a nurse that's going room to room is spending less time hunting down, I don't know, a paper or going back to the nursing station to grab something, or so the way the building is designed in that aspect that we're inadvertently like we're not, I guess the direction isn't we're going to save the nurse because of this process or whatever, but the way the building is designed just naturally allows it to happen with as little speed bumps as possible, huh?
Yeah, efficient design, which some clients rightly acknowledge as saving them money, which is true,
Yeah.
but that's not the intent. That's the side effect.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So it's dollars and cents are a bonus, but really we're talking about like the time, the effort, the energy in the actual process of care when a patient is in the room and the nurse is coming to see them, as opposed to
Exactly.
we hit the construction budget was under budget or whatever when we were done with the building. Sort of a long-term investment view of the building itself.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you, just out of curiosity, how do you have those conversations with some of these I'm assuming like these clinicians turning executives or even executives themselves that are they are just looking at dollars and cents. Like how do you make that case that this is a long-term investment, that we don't just look at the quote unquote the budget or the cost to build this specific wing maybe, or this project or do this upgrade or whatever, and really cast that vision for the long term. Do you lay it out just the way you did with me? Like, okay, this is going to be a long-term thing for the nurse and what it's going to do for the time over, a number of years with this new design? Like, how do those conversations generally run?
To be frank with you, Rafi, our clients don't always have the luxury of long-term thinking.
Uh-huh.
They're stressed, resources are limited, and that short-term budget is important.
Yeah.
So, the most effective tool we have is two things. One is benchmarking other facilities that have been built. This is what we were able to achieve.
Oh,
Can you consider that? And that helps them not only think long term, but it also gives them data and resources to fight for a little more money in that budget. And the other tool is always lessons learned. We did it the way you're suggesting for X, Y, and Z, and here was the long-term expense on your maintenance and operating budget. It saved the client money, but they suffered in the long
yeah.
term.
Yeah. So it helps to have that data so you can point to and be like, oh, either a case study, we did this for somebody else and it was great in the long term, or these are the expenses. Because I don't think, especially you mentioned it, like healthcare executives, healthcare is a very cash flow dependent business, and a lot of times they are like, okay, we need this project to come in at X number of dollars, and they're just looking at this quarter, this month, even. They're not really looking at 5 years down the line of doing this design and basically setting yourself up on this path of increased operational or maintenance expenses. So I like that. Okay, so access, affordability, safety. What are we talking about with safety here? Because I think there's a
Well,
few different ways that people, like when people think safety, they're thinking, okay, the roof's not going to fall on somebody or whatever. But obviously, there's many facets to safety within healthcare, right?
so obviously, for a healthcare architect, you want the building to meet code. But that's just minimum. If you're
Yeah.
meeting code, you're going to have a safe building. But it's more than just building a structure where the roof doesn't fall down or where there is no humidity causing the growth of mold, all of those construction elements. I want clinicians to look at a drawing and I want them to see the various rooms and I want them to visualize what's happening in that room that is safe or harmful. And one of the best examples is a medication room or a medication alcove. What's the lighting like in that room? Where is that room? Is there traffic going back and forth, distracting the person grabbing those drugs or making those drugs? So that's what I mean by safety. It might also be for some clients and some patient populations, should we have manual patient lifts or should we invest in ceiling mounted
Mm-hmm.
lifts if we're dealing with a lot of traumatic injury patients?
Yeah.
We want to take care of our staff. That's safety.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that's so overlooked, and I like that you brought that up, like the patient care aspect of it. I think when I was looking back at the research a while back, like a lot of healthcare related injuries that aren't like sharp sticks, the majority of them happen during transfers. We're moving a patient from here to there, and maybe they were lifting the patient because the lift was gone or something like that. It was down the hall, and they thought they were going to do that by themselves and got injured. But it does make a whole lot of sense. Taking the engineering cost and the installation cost to put like a ceiling lift that runs the length of the room might seem like, holy cow, this is a big upfront expense. But the added safety to the patients and to the providers themselves is huge. Not to mention, I'm sure, workman's compensation and things like that litigation that might happen because somebody gets injured, God forbid, in a situation like that where they're trying to make do.
Exactly. Yeah, you referenced finding the lift. That's a safety issue.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah. Where do you store
And
it?
it's a waste issue.
Yeah. Oh, so they're all tying in together here. Waste
They
issue.
do.
Okay. So after the safety piece, we've got the quality. Now, again, a lot of, like, you say these five things and they sound very um, like on the surface, you're like, oh well, of course that makes a lot of sense. It's really easy. But as you dig down into them, there's a little bit more nuance than just okay, we're going to get quality pieces in here or quality materials, right? So let's dive into quality a little bit when it comes to this 5 point star.
Well, you're so good at this. Let me ask you what you think quality means in your experience for the healthcare setting.
Ooh, put me on the spot. I mean, obviously, it's going to be my when I'm thinking of it would be like built to last the long term, maybe to endure the test of maybe changes in utilization or patient population that's coming in or something like that. Like we're going to build it, and it's going to be built so well that it can be used for a long time, right?
So, my initial thinking when it comes to quality in the healthcare environment, I admit that I would love for all of our healthcare settings to be aesthetically beautiful, high quality, the iPhone of
Yes.
hospitals. Woohoo! Wouldn't that be fabulous? But honestly, what it comes down to from a healthcare architect's perspective, when I'm asking people to consider the fourth point of quality, what it comes down to is communication.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that, I'll give you an architectural example. Visualize the last time you were seeing your physician for a visit. What was the choreography in that room? Did that clinician have to turn their back to you when they entered the room to wash their hands, or were they facing you one on one with or without a laptop or a computer in front of you? In other words, that eye contact and that communication. So when we're arranging spaces as an architect, are we setting up the choreography for communication?
Ah, okay. So I was off. So I like that it's facilitating communication. We're big on the show here, and I'm a big fan of saying like healthcare is a human experience at the end of the day. It's one person skilled in the art of healing, helping another person on their unique road to recovery. So this idea of quality is like you're building the space so that it facilitates that human connection, right? We're not trying to throw up a barrier or the way it's designed. You're naturally starting this relationship maybe with a physician or a clinician with them turning their back to you or something like that.
And Rafi, it can be clinicians overhearing each other.
Oh yeah.
So, is everybody enclosed in a private office with their door shut? There's value for that at times. But where's the opportunity where physicians and our nurses and social workers and physical therapists overhear each other and learn from each other and contribute? That's another communication quality issue.
Okay. So communication is obviously one of the main drivers of this quality piece. Is there anything else when we think about quality, or is really the main driver like what is this space doing to either facilitate or inhibit communication, either between clinicians or between the patient and the clinicians?
Well, in addition to communication, I really would like to see some art in our facilities, frankly.
Yeah.
Our music, our
Yeah.
sculpture.
Well, because I think like a lot of the environment, not just like the physical environment, but kind of the atmosphere that you get really is uplifted by some of that. Having a beautiful painting or having some music. My wife's um was in the orchestra, did music education, so there's some Bach playing at our house every now and then when I come home, and it does lift the atmosphere a little bit, right?
It does. It does. Yes.
Awesome. All right, and then the final point of this 5 point star is fulfilling. So the space has to be fulfilling. What do we mean by that?
So, as a clinician, we can't cure everybody. Um, many of our patients are not going to make it through whatever journey they're on. They're either
Yeah.
going to be permanently damaged or terminal. So how do you create a setting that instills in the staff in particular the sense that they know they've done all they can to help that patient and be at peace with where that patient ends up, especially in the situation when they're not cured completely. So it really has to do with those staff respite spaces.
Uh-huh.
What can we do to allow the staff to provide all of their care in the other 4 points, access, affordability, safety, quality, and yet also allow them to pull away and forget everything so that they can um, replenish themselves so they can return and provide more care. That's what it's about more than anything else.
Yeah, almost creating a place or an environment that helps almost alleviate the risk or decrease the risk of like clinician burnout or something like that, right?
Critically important.
Yeah. So I guess what are some of the ways that you would do that when designing a space? Let's say it's going to be for like a maybe a unit that's going to be seeing a lot of patients that are status post like a spinal cord injury or even terminal like cancer or something like that. How do you think about creating a space for that respite for the clinicians? Is it as simple as carving out like some physical space for a break room or something like that, or is there more to it than
Oh,
that?
our poor little break rooms turn
Yeah.
out to be the microwave and the lockers.
Yeah.
And often there's not even a window. So yes, it'd be nice to have a window. I think more than anything, it's important. There are two things that I would put as a priority for the staff respite, and that is locate that space so that it's a back door, so that they aren't seen coming and going, so that they don't feel guilty, frankly. So that's a truly a space of escape. So locate it so that it's a back door. And then once that space is created, why does it have to look like a hospital? Again, the lockers and the microwaves. Why can't it look like, I mean, this is going to sound kind of corny and very West Coast California, but pink, why can't it look like wherever the respite space is for Facebook? Where do their staff gather to get away? In that space, give the staff choice. They may all want to gang together at a bar and talk, or they may want to hide in a little pod or chair that covers them up and they can take a nap.
Yeah.
So give them an escape hatch, and then once they're there, let them have a choice of what activities are happening in the space.
Yeah, I think that is I've never heard it that way, but now that you say it, it makes a whole lot of sense. This idea that clinicians, especially in situations like that, in settings like that, where you're dealing with maybe terminal patients or patients that are very ill, it's almost like the clinicians are on. They're on the clock almost all the time, whether they're going to their car or they're coming in or they're walking around the facility. The idea of a backdoor entrance, like now that you mention it, it's like, oh, sure, why doesn't everybody do it like that? Like it just makes a whole lot of sense. That's awesome. Cool deal. Um, okay, so we've kind of hit all five of those points. Um, and we've talked a little bit about how each of those points affects the healing process and healthcare in general. Um, I always end with this. Like if there's like, because it sounds like a lot that we've covered here. If there's like one or two main points you'd want a listener to walk away with from the episode as it pertains to healthcare architecture, designing spaces where people are going to be receiving and giving healthcare services, um, what would that point or those points be?
Oh, thank you for that question. 2 points. One, I'll repeat what I said earlier. Buildings don't heal people, people heal people. So it's that whole concept of take care of your staff. If there are no clinicians, there
Yeah,
is no healthcare, period. And then the other point that I'd like listeners to remember, a hospital, clinic, or whatever, is 24/7 machine. Name another facility that's open 24/7. A church closes during the week, a school closes at night, shopping malls close in the weekends and are in the evenings or on holidays. Healthcare settings are always 24/7 and they're always a machine. It's not just the equipment, but it's that machine of thinking and
Yeah.
the communication that we constantly need. It's the most important setting, I think, in our society.
Yeah, no, that is so true. Just the fact of it's almost like so I was driving down the road the other day with my son, and we've got a big factory, an industrial. We've got an industrial park right down the road from the clinic, and it was we were coming back from hunting in the evening, and my son said, "Dad, there's a lot of lights there. There are people there working," and I said, "Yeah, I mean, they keep the factories running every day, all day, even on Sundays." Um, and he paused for a second and he said, he was like, well, nobody else works all the time like that. And I said, actually, if we drive down the road a little bit farther, you're going to hit about three hospitals and they're all the same way. So it is true. And like you said, they're always on. The people are always on. The system itself is always churning. There's always that communication. And I mean, you want to talk about a recipe for burnout, like that is one of them for sure.
Yes,
So
yes, definitely.
well, Sharon, thanks so much for taking the time. I've definitely enjoyed this. This has been super, super interesting. If people want to find out more about you, maybe about the classes you're teaching or how to connect with some of your work, where can they do that?
So LinkedIn is the easiest way.
Okay.
And I'm always open to email either at my architecture firm, Harley Ellis Devereaux, or at my faculty role, which is UCSF.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and link to that all that in the show notes so people can connect with you and find you. So,
Great.
Sharon,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much.
Yeah, you too. Have a nice afternoon.